This Christmas season, at the grazing table, surrounded by friends, I had an interesting discussion. We had food on our plate. The question was, are we eating right? Are we eating calories? Are we having enough nutrition? This took me back to a column written by my fellow columnist, G. Chandrashekhar, who has been on our show earlier too. He's an economist, journalist, and policy commentator, well known for his expertise in agriculture, commodity, and economic policy. He's often been consulted by regulators and other policymakers. He joins me on the show where we talk about what is food security. With all the food on our table, are we eating right? Welcome to BasisPointInsight.com. I am Krishnadevan, your host, and joining me is G. Chandrashekhar. So, with your permission, I will address you as Shekhar. We've known each other for some time.
बिल्कुल
So, I will just dive right into the question. When you say India has a protein problem in a growth economy, how does protein deficiency play out in Indian kitchens today?
very interesting. For a population of say about 1.4 billion in our country, that's actually represented by about 340, 350 million families or households. Okay, I find there are three categories of kitchens for these 340, 350 million families. The first one on top, I find about 25 million families or households which are obviously financially very well off. That represents about 100 million people. They have no dearth of quality food, no dearth of nutritious food or protein rich food, and they can afford all of that. And that's visible. And you and I know that it's actually visible. Next, I find 100 million families, which broadly would represent about 400 million people. They have very modest but growing incomes. They are not rich, but they are very, very aspirational. And in their kitchen, by and large, they are, I think, they eat well, they live reasonably well, they eat nutritious foods. But remember, for that particular section of population, 100 million families, they would also be subject to price elasticity of demand and income elasticity of demand. If prices were to spike, they would actually compromise on their consumption of protein food.
All right.
And we have seen it happen. But if their incomes go up, obviously they will consume more. And then for this, the third one, about 160, 165 million families is what honestly you and I should be really worried about, and we are. And that 160 million families, bottom of the pyramid, represent about 800 million people. These 800 million people are really financially challenged. They are extraordinarily vulnerable. They lack wholesome foods. The government, of course, supplies to them free ration of rice and wheat. But what is rice and wheat? It's only carb. It's only calorie, and they, in my view, decisively lack consumption of protein rich foods, and that shows up in the national family health survey data. And therefore, sadly, again, I think, given the socio-economic structure and education levels in our country, a vast majority of the population is not really aware or conscious about nutrition, health, protein, importance of protein rich foods. But I don't blame them, because we have not educated them. Second, we have not made protein rich foods accessible to them and affordable for them. Therefore, there are three different kinds of kitchens, and it plays out slightly differently in each one of them.
So, Shekhar, essentially, you're arguing that India has filled plates with calories and not with nutrition.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
where did the country go wrong in designing food security and welfare schemes?
That's a great question. Then we must actually wind back something like 70 years. Okay, in the 1950s and even in the early 1960s, early to mid 1960s, for a variety of reasons, India depended on import of cereals. We lived what is called, uh, pejoratively called, and I feel very angry saying it, but that's the ground reality, ship to mouth existence. I remember as a teenager standing in Mumbai, Bombay, then of course, long queues in front of ration shops and carrying huge bags home, all of that. And therefore, we had that ship to mouth existence. Uh, PL 480, this generation may not know what is PL 480. It's called Public Law 480, under which the US used to supply to us wheat. Okay, but anyway, all that is history. Then Green Revolution happened. Great, extraordinary achievement. Green Revolution happened, and it was the need of the hour at that time. There was absolutely no doubt at all. And Green Revolution ensured that we had what everybody believes to be food security. But I believe, in retrospect, actually, the policymakers then equated food security with self sufficiency in rice and wheat.
All right.
But
Okay.
food security goes well beyond all of that, well beyond rice and wheat. Rice and wheat, staples, fine cereals are important, but food security is much beyond that. But to me, it appears they equated food security with self sufficiency in rice and wheat, as a result of which oil seeds were bypassed, pulses were bypassed by the Green Revolution. And even in, if I remember correctly, 1977-78, when the then Janta government came, public distribution system was first introduced, PDS, in late 77, early 78. Even there, rice and wheat were supplied at highly subsidized rates, and not pulses, not edible oils, etc., not nothing else. And therefore, we actually lacked over the last several decades consumption of protein-rich legumes, like pulses. Only in recent years, actually, even in welfare programs like the midday meal scheme, ICDS, your integrated child development scheme like Anganwadi, there's some inclusion of coarse grains, pulses, etc. But for decades, we had ignored all of that, and therefore, that's exactly what went wrong. But
So,
that's in retrospect. Yeah.
so that's a very interesting point that you made, that pulses and other proteins are central to our diet.
Yes.
Yet
Yeah.
we are now chasing self-sufficiency, and we are running a large import bill. So, what does that mean about how we value foods that actually nourish host engines?
Oh yes. Yeah. We have actually ignored uh, augmenting domestic production of oil seeds and pulses. And there are, I have myself written, believe you me, KD, that I've written at least two policy papers each at the request of the government for achieving Atmanirbhar in pulses and Atmanirbhar in your oil seeds. And I find there's a new mission on pulses, and I also find some of my recommendations reflecting in those missions. But that's another matter. But the question is, there are policy prescriptions available, but we need political will. I think political will is actually lacking. And if you look at pulses in particular, excellent, extraordinary uh, protein, legume, it's actually central to our thali, our food.
Correct.
North India eats generally dal roti. South India eats dal chawal, very broadly, and therefore dal is an integral part of our thali. But yet, we are the world's largest producers of pulses. We are also, ironically, the world's largest importers of pulses, and our per capita pulses availability is much below what nutritionists recommend. Nutritionists say you must consume at least 20 kilograms per person per year, but we are standing somewhere at 12 or 13, or not 14 kilograms per person per year. Worse, allow me to complete. Worse, there's a skew in consumption. The bottom 160 million families, we are talking about 800 million people, consume much less than what the per capita number would suggest. What is per capita? After all, total consumption divided by population. But there is a skew in consumption. That bottom 800 million people are the most vulnerable and suffering malnutrition. They need to eat more pulses, but they don't get. And pulses have not yet become a part of the public distribution system like rice and wheat. The government can procure 60, 70, 80 million tons of rice and wheat every year. I'm sure they can easily procure 2, 3, 4 million tons and give along with rice and wheat to the population. Even 1 kilo per family per month, just to start with. But that's not happened. I've argued in so many forums about this, but political will, I think that's
Shiva,
lacking.
that's a very good point that you make about political will. Then why is it that we see that some states manage to do better than on nutrition than other states?
Right. Now, political will is from the central government. This is the point I want to make. I want to make it clear. Some states actually supply pulses under the public distribution system, but within that state. That's the state's initiative and they absorb whatever
Okay.
subsidies are there. But in case of nutrition, some states do much better than others, primarily because of their commitment and their political will. I think it depends on the governance, strength of governance of the state government and the district administration, the commitment of the district administration. So state governments have to send out clear message to the district administration, and district administration must send out very clear message to say Anganwadis and all the schools, midday meal scheme, etc., to ensure that the scheme that the right kind of food reaches the right kind of target consumers. And therefore, some states are doing much better. There is no doubt at all. South India generally is doing faring far better than North India. That's something I'm convinced about, primarily because of, I think, much better governance standards. Yeah.
Let us come back to the whole price issue.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
prices of protein crops fall below support level,
Yeah.
so what does it mean to that child waiting for that midday meal or for the farmer?
Yes, very interesting question. And this is something I've written about and spoken about. When a commodity is in short supply, when a crop is in short supply, logically its prices must rise, and
Right.
the primary producer of that crop, oilseeds or pulses or whatever, he must benefit. We in India are facing an absolutely paradoxical, ironic, anomalous situation, which is that we produce oilseeds, we produce pulses, they are in short supply, and yet the primary producer, which is the farmer, does not get the right kind of price, the remunerative price, or the minimum support price, and therefore the state has to intervene. There is something fundamentally flawed in the policy making process, because MSP by itself is not going to deliver any benefit to the farmer. MSP will ensure a basic minimum price that the farmer gets. But if the prices were to fall below the MSP, you need a strong support procurement infrastructure to support prices. And that's procurement infrastructure for pulses and oilseeds is quite weak. In case of rice and wheat, you have the Food Corporation of India, which has
Right.
been doing this job for several decades, and they have reasonably good. They have established the support system. They have the infrastructure. But in case of pulses and oilseeds, it is NAFID, National Agriculture Cooperative Marketing
Yeah.
Federation. My pardon my saying they're all my friends, but but their infrastructure, their commitment leaves much to be desired, and therefore we need to strengthen that procurement infrastructure. Therefore, I keep writing and saying we need not just MSP, but MSP plus plus. So the MSP first plus is the procurement infrastructure, and the second plus I'm talking about is the import and export policy. We need also an import or export policy that will support the grower. For example, take pulses. We have MSP, we have weak procurement, prices are low, yet we are very large importers. we import, I think last year we imported 7 million tons. Believe you me, record import. And oil seeds and oils, we import 15 to 16 million tons of edible oil worth 15 to 16 billion dollars every year, and yet soybean prices are low, yet rapeseed mustard prices are low, because faulty import and export policy, import policy, MSP, and procurement must all work in lockstep, must work in tandem. That because they are all handled by different ministries, and each ministry works in a silo. Commerce Ministry, Finance Ministry, your Food and Consumer Affairs Ministry, Agriculture Ministry, they, to my mind, seem to be working in silos. We need a very coordinated approach. Yes, I'm not against import. Imports are required whenever there is a shortage, because imports will advance consumer interest. There's no doubt at all. It will contain inflation. All those arguments are given, but imports can be regulated. Imports can be regulated in a way that does not hurt your domestic producer. But that's completely lacking.
I'll come back to a topic that you always talked about
Mm.
soya being a kind of affordable
Yeah,
uh, protein.
yeah,
What will it take for soya to move away from animal feed to coming onto our plate? Personally, even I struggle with having soya. So
yeah.
how do we get it onto our thali?
Absolutely. I think soybean is a very versatile crop. All of us know, and it lends itself to a lot of value addition. We can have soy-based energy bars and snacks, soy nuggets. We can have tofu. We have soy milk, soy lecithin. All this soy lecithin can be used as an your meat extender, or even meat alternative, etc. Soy dal analog is again another great product. For I would expect the food industry to actually explore these market opportunities, because there's a big protein market waiting to be tapped in India. There's a shortage of protein, and therefore that market needs to be tapped. But you need also a long-term, very supportive, predictable policy environment for corporates to invest in R&D, etc. I would actually think personally, and I've spoken in even Madhya Pradesh, which is a bowl of soybean. I've addressed industries. I said I would expect large soy processors to actually invest more in R&D. They must capture market opportunities. They must come up with products that the market wants and market needs and the market deserves. But I'm sorry, I think they have remained content with exporting soy meal as animal feed, but failed to recognize a domestic market for soy based protein rich foods. And today we are in a situation where your exports have dried up because of competition from Brazil and the US, and we are left holding a lot of soybean at low prices, which is hurting the farmer. And you can't develop food markets overnight. It's a process. You should have started 20 years ago to develop India's soy based food market. But I'm sorry, we did nothing. Anyway,
Just a thought. I
yeah,
mean, just came across when you talked about this whole problem with soya. Do
yeah,
you think influencers in the age of social media,
yeah.
dietitians and the so-called master chefs, can they play a role in bringing soya onto our tables?
Absolutely, there is no doubt at all. They can definitely play a role. They can bring about awareness. They can put kind of moral pressure, put it that way,
Okay.
on the stakeholders. But even before that, I would expect logically, soy consumption, in my view, can start with beneficiaries under the welfare programs, say midday meal scheme and ICDS. And when a child starts to uh, 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 eat and enjoy soy-based foods, then it grows up with that, and in future, even as it becomes an adult, it will continue to consume soy-based products. Therefore, it must start from the school level, in my view. And second, the products have to be well researched. They have to be affordable, accessible, and available. and of course palatable. There is no doubt at all. All that calls for investment in R&D and in food processing, etc. Because food habits evolve over time, and I always believe marketing and communication is the key. Can we not make protein consumption fashionable?
Yeah.
I think we should make
Correct.
protein consumption
Fashion.
fashionable, and
Well
therefore
said. Well said.
the promotion should have started 20 years ago, but better late than never. Today is a good day to start that marketing and communication campaign. Yeah,
Right. So finally, Shekhar,
yeah,
why should investors? You talked about investing in R&D
yeah,
and things like that.
yeah,
Ultimately, everything is tied up to the
yeah,
bottom line for
yeah,
company.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Finally, why should investors, companies, and even the government care about protein on the plate as much as profit in the balance sheet?
I agree. I agree. But remember, the government, all stakeholders, government, policymakers, corporates, everybody talks about, say, sustainability. We talk about corporate governance. We talk about CSR spend, etc., etc., etc. All of that, a triple bottom line, people, planet, profit, all of that. Therefore, all stakeholders, in my view, I don't know if I sound arrogant, but I think people haven't understood the deeper meaning of what this triple bottom line actually means. I think there is a deeper meaning which is more ethical, moral, and kind of spiritual. In my view, they are not. They are not. Sustainability is not a slogan, or corporate governance is not a slogan. It's much beyond, much beyond a slogan. Therefore, if we understand the deeper meaning, I think this paradigm, in my view, has a lot more relevance to our country, particularly given our socio-economic status. The 160 million families that we talked about, 800 million people, they have to become more productive, they have to become more healthy, they have to contribute to the economic growth of our country, which will propel our economy higher and higher, and only then we will have the real Vikasit Bharat that we are talking about. Only then we will have Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and all of that in a true sense of the term. Therefore, there is some profit to be made in the at the bottom of the pyramid, as they say. But again, the thought process, the true sense of this the slogans, the true meaning, the inner meaning of this will have to seep down, percolate down to people. But I want to share just one point which is very positive, and
Right.
I was
Good.
very pleased when I read this. The government does something called a Poshan Tracker, that is the nutrition tracker for the last 4 years. So the latest numbers that I saw, and these are government numbers, and because there is no other number, we have to accept these numbers, and which is fine. I'm seeing the very large number of children are underweight, are stunted, and they also suffer wasting, stunting, wasting, and underweight. Very 35% of children are underweight, 32% are stunted, all that. But over the last 4 years, because of this Anganwadi and ICDS midday meal scheme, supplementary nutrition program, just called Poshan, the number of children, or the percentage has actually declined, and I find November that the tracker is captured November 22, November 23, November 24, and November 25, and I'm seeing very gradual decline in malnutrition, in the number of children stunted, number of children wasted, etc. That's very decisive number. Yet, when you look at the actual uh, total number, it's still a fairly large one, and therefore we still have a long way to go. While this portion program is delivering benefit, we need to strengthen this portion program, ensure that children get really nutritious food. And I'm saying this because I remember I was in one of, I don't know whether I should mention the names of states, Okay, Rajasthan, but some years ago, I went to an Anganwadi. I talked to the students and teachers and all the people working. The children were given upma. Okay, which is a typically South Indian Madrasi food. I spoke to some children. I spoke to teacher. They said 3 days a week they get upma, and the children didn't eat at all. Many of the children threw that away or fed stray cattle or dogs, etc., around that place. You need to give them what they like to eat. I'm not saying give them chocolates and cake. I'm not saying that, but make at least whatever you give, make it tasty, make it palatable that they enjoy eating, and then that nutrition goes in. For I think and therefore there's a lot of work to be done, even in Anganwadi, in terms of preparing palatable food and delivering palatable food. And nutrition is not a commodity. Nutrition is not a commodity. I can't buy it in the marketplace. I can buy food. I have $650 billion foreign exchange. Therefore, I can import rice, wheat, edible oil, sugar, pulses, everything. But nutrition is something which is ongoing every day. It's not a commodity. Therefore, nutrition becomes even more important than food security, in my view, because it has long-term economic, social, and other implications.
Hope springs eternal in the human heart, Shekhar. I'm hopeful that things will get better. Thank you very much, Shekhar, for sharing your insights with BasisPointInsight.com. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.